I stood at my kitchen window that October morning, coffee growing cold in my hands, watching my son-in-law Derek kneel in our backyard with a metal lockbox and a shovel. He didn't know I was home. My daughter Sarah had left for her nursing shift an hour earlier, and Derek thought the house was empty. But I'd stayed behind, claiming a migraine, because something about their marriage had felt wrong for weeks. The way he'd started controlling their joint account, how Sarah's smile had dimmed. And now here he was, at 7:45 on a Tuesday, digging a hole beneath the oak tree my late husband planted 30 years ago. He placed the box carefully, covered it with dirt, patted it smooth, scattered leaves over the spot. Then he walked toward his truck, checking his phone. That's when I heard it. A muffling buzzing sound coming from underground, rhythmic and insistent. My heart hammered. Whatever was in that box was still active, still making noise. Derek's truck engine started. If you're watching this, drop your city in the comments because what I'm about to tell you could happen anywhere. He drove away. I was already running across the wet grass in my slippers. My hands hit the cold dirt and I started clawing at the earth like an animal. The buzzing grew louder with each handful of soil I threw aside. My fingernails broke. Mud caked under what was left of them. I didn't care. The sound was definitely electronic, definitely deliberate, and it was coming from directly below me now. I dug faster, my breath coming in short gasps until my fingers hit something solid. Metal. I scraped around the edges of the lockbox, about the size of a large shoebox, and hauled it up. It was heavier than I expected. The buzzing intensified, and I could feel the vibration through the metal. My hands shook as I tried the latch. Locked. Of course it was locked. I looked around desperately, spotted a large rock near the garden bed, and brought it down hard on the cheap padlock. It took 3 strikes. The lock broke. I lifted the lid, my whole body trembling with adrenaline and dread, knowing whatever was inside would change everything. A smartphone screen glowed up at me, vibrating against stacks of $100 bills. The phone was receiving a call. The name on the screen read, M. Don't answer at home. My stomach dropped. I grabbed the phone with my muddy hands, and the vibration stopped as the call went to voicemail. But the screen showed 47 missed calls from the same contact and a string of text messages. I clicked on the messages. Baby, when are you leaving her? Did you get the cash from the account? My flight lands Thursday, we can finally be together. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest, but the phone was just the beginning. Underneath it, wrapped in plastic bags, were tight rolls of cash, easily $20,000 or $30,000. Beside the money, a stack of documents with Sarah's forged signature on loan applications, credit card statements I'd never seen, and a title transfer for our family lake house, the one my husband left to Sarah in his will. Derek had been systematically robbing my daughter blind. I sat back on my heels, the phone clutched in one hand, a forged document in the other, my mind racing through the past 6 months. The times Derek had volunteered to handle Sarah's finances because she worked such long hospital shifts. The weekend, he'd insisted on taking care of the paperwork when we refinanced the lake house. The way he'd slowly isolated her from me and her sister, always with reasonable excuses. Sarah worked so hard, picking up extra shifts to save for the baby they'd been planning, except there was no baby fund. There was this box, buried like a corpse, full of her stolen future. The phone buzzed again in my hand. Another text from M. Derek, answer me. I'm scared. What if she finds out before we leave? I took a screenshot, my hand steadier now, anger replacing shock. Then I carefully scrolled through everything. Bank transfers. Photos of Derek with a blonde woman I didn't recognize, her hand on his chest, his lips on her neck. Plane tickets to Costa Rica for 2 people, departing in 9 days. I needed help, but I couldn't call Sarah. Not yet. Not while she was at the hospital, surrounded by patients who needed her steady hands and clear mind. This news would destroy her, and she deserved to hear it somewhere safe, somewhere she could fall apart without risking her career or her patients' lives. I needed someone I could trust, someone who could help me think clearly. My sister Linda lived 20 minutes away. She'd been through her own divorce, knew lawyers, knew how to handle men who lied. I pulled out my own phone and called her, my voice shaking as she answered. Linda, I need you to come to Sarah's house right now. Don't call first, just come. And Linda, I looked down at the box of evidence sitting in the dirt beside me. Bring your camera and a notary stamp. We're going to bury this son of a bitch, but we're going to do it the right way. She heard something in my voice and didn't ask questions. She just said she'd be there in 15 minutes. I carried the lockbox into the house and laid everything out on the dining room table. $42,000 in cash, counted twice. 12 credit card statements in Sarah's name for cards she'd never opened, totaling $86,000 in debt. The forged title transfer that would have made Derek sole owner of the lake house worth $370,000. Loan documents with Sarah's signature perfectly copied, probably traced, for a $70,000 personal loan she knew nothing about. And the phone, still buzzing periodically with messages from M, whose contact info revealed her full name, Monica Pritchard, with an address in Fort Lauderdale. I took photos of everything with my phone, backed them up to 3 different cloud accounts. Then I started going through the phone more carefully. Derek had been sloppy. He'd kept everything. Emails about closing their joint accounts, messages about selling the house, plans to disappear before Sarah realized the debt he'd manufactured in her name. I felt cold all over. This wasn't just infidelity. This was calculated financial destruction. Linda arrived in 14 minutes, breathless, still in her real estate office blazer. She stopped dead when she saw the table. Jesus Christ, Barbara! Where did this come from? I told her everything, starting with standing at the kitchen window and ending with the screenshots on Derek's phone. She picked up the forged title transfer, her professional eye catching the details immediately. This is notarized. He found a crooked notary, or forged that too. Either way, it's a felony. She pulled out her phone and started taking her own photos, narrating for the video. Today's date, October 17th, 2023. Documentation of financial fraud discovered by Barbara Morrison, mother of victim Sarah Morrison Fletcher. She was already thinking like the paralegal she'd been before getting her real estate license. I watched her work, grateful I'd called her first. She looked up at me, her face grim. We need 3 things immediately. A lawyer, a forensic accountant, and we need to make sure he doesn't know we found this until we're ready. That last part was the hardest. We had to put everything back. Linda photographed every item from multiple angles, took video of the serial numbers on the cash, documented the phone's contents with screen recordings. Then we carefully returned everything to the lockbox exactly as I'd found it, except for $500 I kept as a control sample and 1 document I had Linda notarize as a true copy. We took the box back outside, and I climbed down into the hole I'd created. My hands were screaming with pain now, the adrenaline wearing off, and I could see deep scratches across my palms where I'd torn at the earth. Linda helped me lower the box back into the ground. We covered it with dirt, patted it smooth, scattered the same leaves back over the top. From the street, you couldn't tell anything had been disturbed, but we knew. And now we had proof that would hold up in court. We walked back inside, and Linda made the first call while I washed my hands, watching pink-tinged water circle the drain. By noon, we'd assembled a team. Linda's divorce attorney, Marcus Chen, who specialized in financial fraud. A forensic accountant named Patricia Walsh, who could trace every dollar Derek had stolen. And my neighbor Tom, a retired police detective who listened to our story and made 3 calls that got us connected to the fraud division. Marcus arrived first, a sharp-dressed man in his 50s who'd seen everything and believed nothing until he saw evidence. I showed him the photos. He went through them on my phone, his expression never changing, but I saw his jaw tighten. This is enough for criminal charges: wire fraud, identity theft, forgery. He's looking at 10 to 15 years if convicted. He looked at me directly. But you understand that if we move on this, Sarah's credit is already destroyed. The debt is in her name. We'll prove it's fraud, but it takes time to clear that. Months, maybe longer. I'd already thought about that during the worst hour of my life. What matters is he doesn't get away with it. What matters is my daughter knows the truth before he disappears. Patricia Walsh arrived next, a woman with gray-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. She'd brought her laptop and a portable scanner. We spent 2 hours going through every photo, every document, while she built a timeline of Derek's theft. She showed me how he'd started small, 8 months ago, right after Sarah's father died. He waited until she was grieving and vulnerable. Then he slowly escalated. She pointed to the statements on her screen. See here? First, it's a credit card with a low limit. When she didn't notice, he opened another, then another. Each time, he had the statement sent to a P.O. box. He was methodical. She looked up at me. The lake house transfer is the end game. Once that cleared, he'd have liquidated it and vanished. Your daughter would have been left with $200,000 in debt and no assets. It would have taken her years to recover, if she ever did. The room felt too small suddenly. I had to stand, pace, breathe. Linda put a hand on my shoulder. We were going to stop him. Tom, my retired detective neighbor, had been quiet, but now he spoke up. The girlfriend, Monica Pritchard, I ran her name. She's got a record. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud in Nevada, 2016. Served 18 months. She's done this before. He turned his laptop toward us. A mugshot of the blonde woman from Derek's photos stared back at me, younger, but unmistakably the same person. This is a pattern for her. She finds men with access to money, usually through marriage, and helps them clean out accounts before disappearing. I'd bet my pension Derek isn't even her real target. She's probably got someone else lined up after him. Marcus leaned forward. Which means we can leverage her. If she's a repeat offender and we catch her in the act, she's looking at federal time. We can make her flip on Derek if we do this right. I understood what he was saying. We weren't just protecting Sarah. We were stopping two predators from doing this to another family. The scope of it overwhelmed me, but I knew what my husband would have said. You do what's right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The question was, when to tell Sarah. Marcus advised waiting until we had everything legally documented and a plan in place. If we tell her now, she might confront him. He'll know we're onto him and destroy evidence or run early. Linda disagreed. She's my niece. She deserves to know her husband is betraying her, and she deserves to make decisions about her own life. They both looked at me. The deciding vote. I thought about my daughter, who'd inherited her father's sense of justice and my stubborn loyalty. She'd want to know. But she'd also want to make sure Derek faced consequences. We tell her tonight, after her shift, but we tell her with a plan already in place. She needs to know she's not alone in this, and that we've already started protecting her. Marcus nodded slowly. Then we need to move fast. I'll file paperwork this afternoon for emergency protective orders on her assets. Patricia, I need your preliminary report by 5. Tom, can you get surveillance on Derek until we're ready? Everyone agreed. We had 8 hours before Sarah came home. Patricia worked at my dining table, her fingers flying across her keyboard, building the case. Marcus left to file documents at the courthouse. Tom made calls, and 40 minutes later, a former colleague of his, now working private security, was parked down the street with a clear view of Derek's truck. Linda and I sat in the kitchen, drinking coffee neither of us wanted, trying to figure out how to tell Sarah her marriage was a lie. She's going to blame herself, Linda said quietly. She's going to think she should have seen it. I knew she was right. Sarah had always been the responsible one, the one who took care of everyone else. Finding out she'd been manipulated would cut deep. We make sure she knows this isn't about what she missed. This is about what he did. The choice was his, the crime was his, and the consequences are his. Linda squeezed my hand. She's lucky to have you. I didn't feel lucky. I felt like I'd watched my daughter walk into a trap and hadn't seen it until the jaws were already closing. But I'd seen it now, and I wasn't going to let her go through this alone. At 3 o'clock, Patricia called us back to the table. She'd finished her preliminary analysis. Total estimated theft, $243,000. That includes the cash we found, the fraudulent loans, the credit card debt, and the value of the lake house he attempted to transfer. I traced the money backwards through Derek's accounts. He's been siphoning funds for 8 months, exactly as I thought. He started with small transfers from their joint account, money Sarah probably assumed went to bills. Then he escalated to opening new accounts in her name. She showed us a flowchart on her screen, money moving from account to account like a shell game. He was smart. He spread it across multiple banks so no single institution would flag the activity. But he left a digital trail. I can prove every transaction. Marcus had returned from the courthouse. I've got temporary freezes on all accounts opened in Sarah's name in the past year. Nothing moves without a judge's approval. And I filed for emergency hearings on the fraudulent loans. We should get dates within 2 weeks. Tom's surveillance partner called with an update. Derek had gone to a storage unit across town, stayed for 20 minutes, then met Monica Pritchard at a hotel bar. They'd sat in a back booth, heads close together, Derek showing her something on his phone. Tom's guy had photos. "They're getting nervous," Tom said. "They know the timeline is tight. I'd guess they're planning to move up the departure date." That changed everything. If they ran before we were ready, we might never get justice. Marcus made a decision. "We accelerate. I'm calling the DA's office now. With this much evidence and a flight risk, we can get arrest warrants tonight." He looked at me. "But that means Sarah finds out when the police show up to arrest her husband. Is that how you want her to hear it?" I closed my eyes. No good options. But better she heard it from police with a case built than from Derek with excuses prepared. "Make the call." Marcus stepped outside. Through the window, I watched him pace my front yard, phone pressed to his ear. Linda held my hand. Patricia packed up her laptop. Tom checked his phone for updates. And I waited. Marcus came back inside with news. "The DA is interested. Very interested. But she wants to meet Sarah first. Get her statement. Make sure she's a credible victim witness. Can you bring her in tonight?" I checked the time. Sarah's shift ended at 7. She'd be home by 7:30. "We can have her at your office by 8. He nodded. "I'll set it up. Barbara, you need to understand something. Once we start this process, it becomes public. There will be arrests, probably press coverage because of the dollar amounts involved. Sarah's name will be in court documents. She'll have to testify. Her marriage will end very publicly. Is she strong enough for that?" I thought about my daughter, who'd worked her way through nursing school while caring for her dying father, who held the hands of scared patients and sang to dementia residents who'd forgotten their own names, who'd stood at her father's grave and promised him she'd live a good life, a strong life. She's stronger than anyone knows, including her. Marcus smiled, just slightly. "Good, because this is going to get ugly before it gets better." Sarah came home at 7:32. I was waiting in her living room, Linda beside me on the couch. Sarah stopped in the doorway, still in her scrubs, her face tired from a 12-hour shift. She saw our expressions, and her whole body tensed. "Mom? Aunt Linda? What's wrong? Is it Derek? Did something happen?" The fear in her voice broke my heart. Even now, after everything he'd done, her first instinct was to worry about him. I stood up, crossed the room, and took her hands in mine. "Baby, Derek is fine. But I need you to sit down. I need to tell you something, and it's going to be hard to hear." She pulled her hands back. "You're scaring me." Linda patted the couch. "Please, Sarah. Sit." She sat, her eyes moving between us, trying to read what was coming. I'd rehearsed this moment 100 times in my head. There was no easy way. So I started with the simplest truth. "This morning I saw Derek bury a metal box in your backyard. I dug it up." Her face showed confusion, not alarm. "What? Why would he bury anything?" I took a breath. "Because the box contained evidence of crimes he's been committing against you for the past 8 months. The next 20 minutes were the worst of my life. I told her everything while Linda held her hand and her face crumbled piece by piece. The money, the forged documents, the debt, the girlfriend, the plane tickets, the plan to disappear. She didn't cry at first. She just sat there, her brain trying to process information that didn't make sense. "No," she said finally. "No, Derek wouldn't. He loves me. We're trying for a baby. We just talked about baby names last week." I showed her the photos on my phone. She looked at the image of Derek kissing Monica, and something inside her broke. The sound that came out of her was animal, wounded. Linda wrapped her arms around her while she sobbed into her aunt's shoulder. I knelt in front of them, my hand on Sarah's knee, tears running down my own face. "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." She cried for 10 minutes, great gasping sobs that shook her whole body. Then she stopped, wiped her face, and looked at me with red eyes. "Show me everything." We showed her everything. Every document, every message, every photo. She read it all with a nurse's clinical focus, her emotional walls going up as her analytical brain took over. When she got to the forged signature on the lake house transfer, her hand trembled. "That's Dad's house. The last thing he left me." Her voice was flat, empty. Derek was going to take the last thing I have of my father and sell it. She looked up at me. "Where is he now?" Tom answered from the doorway. We hadn't heard him come in. "Under surveillance. He doesn't know we're on to him." Sarah stood up, steadier now. Good. What's the plan? Marcus, who'd arrived while she was crying, stepped forward. The DA wants to meet you tonight. If you're willing to give a statement, we can have warrants by morning. She didn't hesitate. Let's go. She went upstairs to change out of her scrubs. Linda looked at me with concern. She's in shock. That's not acceptance. That's survival mode. I knew. I'd seen the same thing when her father died. Sarah shut down her emotions and handled what needed handling. The breakdown would come later, but for now, her focus would help us. She came back downstairs in jeans and a sweatshirt, her hair pulled back, no makeup covering her red eyes. She looked young and small and absolutely determined. We all drove to Marcus's office together. The DA was a woman named Rachel Simmons, mid-40s, with an air of competent authority that immediately put Sarah at ease. She shook Sarah's hand, offered her coffee, and got down to business. Mrs. Fletcher, I've reviewed the evidence your mother and her team gathered. What your husband did constitutes multiple felonies: identity theft, wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. If he'd succeeded in transferring that lake house and leaving the country, you'd be facing financial ruin. I want to build a case that puts him in prison and helps you recover financially. But I need your full cooperation. Sarah's voice was steady. What do you need from me? For the next hour, Sarah gave her statement. She walked Rachel through their marriage, the gradual ways Derek had taken over their finances, the times she'd thought something was off but trusted him instead of her instincts. She admitted she'd signed some documents without reading them carefully because she was exhausted from work, and he'd told her they were just routine refinancing papers. Rachel recorded everything, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When Sarah finished, Rachel turned off the recorder. You did nothing wrong. You trusted your husband. That's not a crime or a failure. What he did is on him. Sarah's voice cracked for the first time. I'm a nurse. I'm supposed to pay attention to details. How did I miss this? Rachel leaned forward. Because you're not a forensic accountant or a fraud investigator. You're a woman who worked 12-hour shifts saving lives while your husband systematically betrayed you at home. The fact that you didn't catch him doesn't mean you failed. It means he's a skilled con artist. She paused. And based on his girlfriend's record, he had a professional helping him. That seemed to steady Sarah. The idea that this wasn't just her husband's personal betrayal, but an actual criminal operation, made it less about her judgment and more about their crime. Rachel continued. Here's what happens next. Tonight my office prepares arrest warrants for Derek Fletcher and Monica Pritchard. Tomorrow morning, we execute those warrants simultaneously. Derek will be arrested at your home. You shouldn't be there when it happens. We'll also seize his phone, computers, and any other devices as evidence. The box buried in your yard becomes evidence too. Can you stay somewhere else tonight? Sarah looked at me. I'll stay at my mom's. Rachel nodded. Good. Don't contact Derek. Don't warn him. Act normal. Sarah laughed bitterly. Act normal? Sure, I'll just go home and smile at the man who was planning to destroy my life and disappear. Marcus spoke up. You don't have to see him. We can send officers to get your things tonight, and you leave before he gets home. But Sarah shook her head. No. If I disappear, he'll know something's wrong. He might run tonight instead of tomorrow. She looked at Rachel. What time will you arrest him? Rachel checked her phone. Warrants should be ready by midnight. We'll execute at 6 a.m. when he's less likely to be alert. Sarah did the math. He usually gets home from his office by 8. I can be there, act normal for a few hours, then say I'm going to my mom's because she's not feeling well. That gives me an excuse to leave by 10. He'll think everything is fine. I wanted to argue, to tell her she didn't have to face him, but I saw the determination in her face. She needed to do this. She needed to look him in the eye one more time before his world collapsed. Rachel agreed. Okay, but you wear a wire. If he says anything incriminating, it helps our case. They fitted Sarah with a small recording device, barely noticeable under her sweatshirt. Tom briefed her on how to steer conversation toward the finances without being obvious. Marcus reminded her she could stop at any time, just say the code phrase, I need to call my mom, and he'd have officers there in 3 minutes. We all watched her walk to her car, this brave, broken woman who was somehow holding herself together. Linda rode with her for moral support. Tom followed in his car, and I drove behind them all, my hands gripping the wheel, praying this would work. We parked down the street from Sarah's house, in view but not obvious. She and Linda went inside. The lights came on in the kitchen. Through the window, I saw Sarah moving around, making dinner, performing normalcy. At 8:15, Derek's truck pulled into the driveway. I watched him walk into his house, kiss his wife hello, completely unaware that the walls were closing in. Tom's voice came through the burner phone he'd given me, relaying what he was hearing through Sarah's wire. She's doing great, completely calm. I listened to my daughter make small talk with the man who'd tried to rob her blind, and I prayed for morning. Derek's voice came through the wire, casual and warm. "How was your shift, babe?" Sarah responded with practiced ease. "Exhausting. We had a code blue that lasted 40 minutes. Didn't make it." She was using real details from her day, grounding her performance in truth. "I'm sorry, honey, that's rough." The sound of him comforting her, knowing what he'd been planning, made my stomach turn. "Yeah. Hey, I was thinking about the lake house. We should go up there this weekend, just us. I haven't been since Dad died." A pause. I could imagine Derek's face, wondering if this was a trap. "Sure, that sounds good. I'll check my schedule." Wrong answer. If he'd actually intended to keep the house, he'd have said yes immediately. Sarah kept going. "I was also thinking we should meet with a financial planner. Really get serious about our savings plan for the baby fund." Another pause. "Yeah, definitely. I'll look into some options." He was lying smoothly, buying time he didn't think he needed. "Actually," Sarah said, her voice perfectly casual, "can you show me the current balance on our joint account? I just want to see where we're at." This was the moment. If he showed her the real numbers, she'd see how much he'd drained. If he refused, it was suspicious. Derek's response came quickly. "You know what? The app is acting weird on my phone. I'll show you tomorrow when I'm at my computer." Deflection. Classic. Sarah didn't push. "No problem." "Oh, I meant to ask, did you ever hear back about that refinancing on the lake house? You said there was paperwork, but I never saw final documents." I held my breath. Through the phone, I heard Derek moving, maybe opening the fridge, buying himself time to think. "Yeah, it fell through. The rates weren't good enough. I'll bring it up again in a few months." Another lie. The papers had gone through. He'd forged her signature and filed them. He just didn't want her to know until he was gone. "Okay, that's fine. I trust you to handle it." I could hear the effort it took Sarah to say those words. Linda's voice came through a second phone, texting me. "She's incredible. He has no idea." But we only needed her to hold out for another 90 minutes. Tom's voice in my ear. "Derek just got a text. He's looking at his phone." Stepping away to respond. Probably Monica, getting nervous. Through the wire, I heard Derek say, "Hey babe, I need to make a quick work call. I'll be in the office." The office was Derek's home workspace, down the hall from the kitchen. Sarah waited until she heard the door close, then her voice came through the wire, quieter. "He just got a text and basically ran out of the room. Something's making him nervous." Tom responded, "His surveillance guy says Monica called him twice today. They're probably getting paranoid about the timeline." Sarah's voice was steady, but I could hear the anger underneath. "Good. Let them sweat." She was silent for a moment, then, "I'm going to start acting sick. Give myself an excuse to leave early." Smart. She'd planned this adaptation on her own. A few minutes later, I heard her call out, "Derek, I'm not feeling great. I think I'm getting a migraine." His voice came back, concerned husband again. "You want me to get your medication?" The medication he'd probably planned to leave her with when he disappeared with her money. "No. I think I need to go to my mom's. She has the good stuff, and honestly, I just want my mom when I feel this bad." Perfect. The little girl voice, the appeal to wanting her mother. Derek wouldn't question it. "You sure? I can take care of you here." Please say no, I thought. Get out of that house. "I know, but Mom's expecting me anyway. She called earlier, said she wasn't feeling well either. I should check on her." Derek agreed, probably relieved to have the house to himself for whatever he needed to do. Sarah packed an overnight bag, moving through the house she'd shared with her husband, seeing it all differently now. Every piece of furniture they'd bought together, every photo on the wall, all of it contaminated by his lies. She came out to the kitchen where Derek was washing dishes, playing the good husband one last time. Through the wire, we heard her say goodbye. "I'll be back tomorrow after my mom's feeling better." He kissed her. The sound of it made me want to drive through the front door and drag him out by his throat. But Sarah held steady. "Love you," she said, the lie tasting like ash. "Love you too," he responded, his lie so much bigger. She walked out the door, down the sidewalk, got in her car. Linda got in the passenger seat. They drove away. Tom and I followed. 3 blocks away, Sarah pulled over, turned off the car, and threw up in the gutter. Linda held her hair back while she sobbed and retched. I got out of my car and held my daughter while she finally broke. "I told him I loved him," she choked out. "I looked right at him and lied." I stroked her hair. "Baby, you did what you had to do. You were so brave." She wiped her mouth, her whole body shaking. "Tomorrow he gets arrested." She looked up at me with eyes full of grief and rage. "I want to be there. I want to watch." Rachel Simmons called at 11:45 p.m. "Warrants are signed. We move at 6 a.m., Mrs. Fletcher. I want to advise you again that you don't need to be present for the arrest." Sarah, sitting at my kitchen table with ice-cold determination in her eyes, said, "I'll be there." Rachel didn't argue. "Then you stay in an unmarked car with me. You don't approach the house until after he's in custody. Understood?" Sarah agreed. We tried to sleep. None of us managed more than an hour. At 4:30 a.m., we were all awake, drinking coffee, not talking much. Linda made eggs no one ate. Tom checked his phone compulsively. Marcus arrived at 5 with final paperwork for Sarah to sign, authorizing the seizure of evidence from her own home. At 5:30, we drove to Sarah's neighborhood. 3 unmarked police cars were already staged 2 streets over. Rachel met us there, professional and calm. She had a tactical team with her, which seemed excessive until she explained, "Derek has no violent record, but we don't take chances when someone's about to lose their freedom." Sarah sat in Rachel's car, watching the sky lighten, waiting for her marriage to officially end. At precisely 6 a.m., the tactical team moved in. Tom had given them the entry code for the front door, information Sarah had provided. They went in fast and quiet. Through the radio in Rachel's car, we heard the team leader. "Suspect located. Bedroom. Still in bed." Derek's voice, groggy and confused. "What the hell? Who are you?" The team leader, calm and authoritative. "Derek Fletcher, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." Derek's voice rose, panicked now. "What? No, there's a mistake. Where's my wife? Sarah." But Sarah wasn't there to save him. She was sitting 50 feet away, watching through the windshield as they brought her husband out in handcuffs, wearing pajama pants and a t-shirt, his hair sticking up, his face pale with shock. He was looking around frantically, maybe for her, maybe for an escape. Rachel said quietly, "Monica Pritchard is being arrested in Florida right now. Simultaneous raids. We coordinated with Fort Lauderdale PD." Sarah watched them put Derek in the back of a police car. Her face was blank, emotionless. "I thought I'd feel something," she said. "Satisfaction or anger or something. But I just feel empty." Linda, in the back seat, squeezed her shoulder. "That's normal. The feelings come later." Rachel handed Sarah a card. "Victim Services. Therapist who specializes in financial fraud trauma. You'll need it." Sarah took the card, still watching the police car drive away with Derek inside. The forensic team spent 6 hours processing Sarah's house. They dug up the lockbox, photographed it in place, cataloged every item. They seized Derek's laptop, his files, his phone records. They found more evidence than we'd even known existed. A second laptop hidden in the garage with spreadsheets tracking every dollar he'd stolen. Emails to Monica discussing which pieces of Sarah's jewelry would be easiest to sell. A notebook with timeline notes. File house transfer, November 8th. Close accounts, November 10th. Flights, November 15th. Leave phone at office, November 14th. Make her think I'm working late, then head straight to airport. He'd planned every detail, except the possibility that someone might catch him. Sarah walked through the house while they worked, seeing it all with new eyes. In the bedroom closet, she found a suitcase already packed with Derek's clothes. In the bathroom, his toiletries were staged to grab quickly. He'd been ready to walk out of her life with everything that mattered to him, leaving her with nothing but debt and betrayal. She sat on the bed they'd shared and called her hospital supervisor. "I need to take personal leave. Family emergency. I can provide documentation. Her supervisor, who'd known Sarah for 5 years, heard something in her voice. Take all the time you need. Your patients will be here when you're ready. Sarah hung up and looked at me. I don't know who I am if I'm not a nurse and not a wife. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, Patricia Walsh's full forensic report came through. The total theft was actually higher than initially estimated. $268,000, including cash withdrawals, fraudulent loans, transferred assets, and the attempted lake house theft. Derek had even taken out a secret line of credit against Sarah's future inheritance from my estate, somehow obtaining forged documents that claimed I'd signed over financial power of attorney. He'd planned to drain me too, once Sarah was destroyed. Patricia's report also revealed that Derek had done this before, to a previous girlfriend in Arizona 8 years ago. He'd never been charged because she'd been too ashamed to report it and didn't have evidence. This time, we had everything. Marcus filed a motion to have that Arizona case included as evidence of pattern behavior. The woman from Arizona, contacted by investigators, agreed to testify. She flew in and met Sarah at my house. Her name was Jennifer, and she was 39 now, remarried, stable. But I saw the recognition in her eyes when she looked at my daughter. He told me I was stupid, Jennifer said quietly, that I should have known better, should have watched the accounts. It took me 6 years to rebuild my credit, and longer to stop blaming myself. Sarah listened, her hands wrapped around a coffee mug. How did you move past it? Jennifer smiled sadly. Therapy. A lot of therapy. And understanding that being trusting isn't the same as being stupid. He's the criminal, not us. They talked for 2 hours, and when Jennifer left, Sarah seemed lighter somehow. Like knowing she wasn't alone in this made it more bearable. That night, she finally cried without anger, just grief for the life she'd thought she had. Linda and I held her, and we let her mourn. The day before the hearing, Monica Pritchard's attorney contacted Rachel with a deal. Monica would testify against Derek in exchange for a reduced sentence. She'd provide details about how they'd met, how she'd coached him through the fraud, how many other men she'd worked with over the years. Rachel brought the offer to Sarah. With her testimony, we can guarantee Derek gets the maximum sentence. Without it, he might get less time. But it means she gets off easier too. Sarah didn't hesitate. Take the deal. I want him to pay for all of it. Monica's statement, given 2 days later, was damning. She'd met Derek on a dating app 18 months ago while he was already married to Sarah. She'd researched Sarah, identified her as a high-value target because of the lake house and the inheritance potential. She taught Derek how to forge signatures, which banks were less likely to flag fraud, how to isolate Sarah from her family gradually so she wouldn't have anyone questioning the finances. It's what I do, Monica said flatly in her deposition. I find weak men with access to money through women, and I exploit both. She had no remorse, just clinical detachment. She was a predator, and Derek had been her tool. The preliminary hearing was brief. Derek's public defender, a tired-looking man named Patterson, tried to argue that Derek had been manipulated by Monica, that he was a victim too. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman named Holland, wasn't buying it. Mr. Fletcher had every opportunity to stop, to confess, to make this right. Instead, he bought plane tickets and packed a suitcase. That's not a victim's behavior. That's a perpetrator fleeing consequences. She bound him over for trial, denied bail because he was a flight risk, and ordered restitution hearings to begin immediately. Derek looked across the courtroom and finally made eye contact with Sarah. She stared back at him, her face expressionless. He opened his mouth like he might speak, but his attorney grabbed his arm. They led him back to holding. Sarah stood, collected her purse, and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Outside, news cameras were waiting. The case had made local headlines. Nurse husband's $250,000 fraud exposed by vigilant mother-in-law. Rachel had warned us about the media attention. Sarah stopped, looked at the cameras, and made a decision. She stepped up to the microphones. My name is Sarah Fletcher. I'm a registered nurse, a daughter, and someone who trusted the wrong person. What happened to me can happen to anyone. Watch your accounts. Trust your instincts. And know that being a victim of fraud doesn't make you stupid or weak. It makes you human. Her voice was steady and strong. "I'm grateful to my mother, who literally dug up the truth. I'm grateful to the legal team who believed me, and I'm grateful I'll rebuild my life without a criminal in it." She stepped back. The reporters shouted questions, but she was done. We went home. The trial was set for 6 months out, but Derek's attorney contacted Marcus 2 months in with a plea bargain. Derek would plead guilty to all charges in exchange for 12 years instead of the 15 he was facing at trial. He'd also agree to full restitution, though Marcus was realistic about that part. He doesn't have the money anymore. He spent or hid most of it. "You'll get a judgment, but collecting will take years." Sarah considered the plea. 12 years meant Derek would be 51 when he got out. She'd be 44, young enough to have rebuilt everything he'd destroyed. "Take it," she said. "I don't want to spend 6 months in a trial reliving this. I want to move forward." The plea hearing was in November, 5 weeks after I'd first seen Derek burying that box. Sarah wore a navy dress and sat in the front row, while Derek, in an orange jumpsuit, stood before Judge Holland. "Mr. Fletcher, you are pleading guilty to 16 counts of fraud, forgery, and identity theft. Do you understand that you will serve 12 years in state prison and owe restitution of $268,000 plus court costs?" Derek's voice was barely audible. "Yes, Your Honor." She leaned forward. "Do you have anything to say to your victim?" He turned to look at Sarah. She met his eyes, waiting. "I'm sorry," he said. The words sounded hollow. Sarah stood up. Judge Holland nodded permission. "You're not sorry you did it," Sarah said clearly. "You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference." She sat back down. Judge Holland sentenced him immediately. 12 years, eligible for parole in 8 with good behavior. They led him away. This time Sarah did feel something. Relief. The restitution process was complicated. Patricia traced what she could of the stolen money. $30,000 had gone to Monica, who had spent most of it, but agreed to turn over $12,000 remaining in her accounts as part of her plea deal. Another $47,000 was in Derek's various accounts, now seized. The rest was gone, spent or hidden well enough that even Patricia couldn't find it. Sarah would receive about $59,000 immediately, and the court ordered Derek to pay $500 monthly from any prison wages, though Marcus warned that would take decades to fulfill. The fraudulent debts were being cleared through the courts, a process that would take 6 months but would eventually restore Sarah's credit. The lake house title was corrected back to Sarah's name. She owned it free and clear again. Patricia estimated Sarah would recover maybe a third of what Derek stole, and the rest would be written off as losses. "It's not fair," Patricia said, "but it's the reality of fraud cases. Sometimes you can't get back what's gone." Sarah had accepted that. The money mattered less than the justice. She could rebuild finances. It was harder to rebuild trust. Sarah moved back into her house after the sentencing. She'd considered selling it, but Linda convinced her not to make major decisions while still processing trauma. "Live there for a year," Linda advised. "Then decide." So Sarah stayed. She changed the locks, repainted the bedroom, rearranged furniture until it felt like hers instead of theirs. She went back to work part-time, gradually increasing her hours as her emotional strength returned. Her colleagues knew something had happened but didn't pry. She was grateful for that. The hospital felt like a refuge, a place where she was competent and needed and good at something. Her identity as a nurse had survived when her identity as a wife had shattered. She held on to that. 3 months after the sentencing, on a cold February morning, she was working a shift when a patient's daughter approached her. "Are you Sarah Fletcher, the nurse from the news?" Sarah tensed, expecting judgment or pity, but the woman's eyes were grateful. "I saw your statement outside the courthouse. My sister's going through something similar with her husband. She thought she was the only one. Your words helped her report it." Sarah felt something shift inside her. Maybe her pain could have purpose. She started speaking publicly about financial fraud in marriage, partnering with a nonprofit that helped victims navigate the legal and emotional aftermath. She told her story at community centers, women's groups, law enforcement training sessions. Every time she spoke, someone would approach her afterward with their own story. She heard from dozens of people, mostly women but some men too, who'd been systematically robbed by intimate partners. The statistics were staggering. Financial abuse occurred in 99% of domestic violence cases, but also happened in isolation. without physical violence, in otherwise normal-seeming relationships. It's the perfect crime, Sarah told audiences, because the victim usually doesn't know until it's too late, and even when they know, they're too ashamed or financially destroyed to fight back. She urged people to maintain separate accounts, check credit reports quarterly, never sign documents without reading them completely, and trust their instincts when something felt wrong. My mother trusted her instincts, Sarah said. She stayed home that day when she normally wouldn't have. She watched when she could have looked away. She acted when she could have told herself it was nothing. She saved me. I attended her first public speech and cried through the whole thing, proud and heartbroken at once. The 1-year anniversary of the discovery came around. October 17th again, a Thursday like before. Sarah took the day off and drove to the cemetery where her father was buried. She sat at his grave and told him everything. Dad, I married someone who turned out to be a criminal. I didn't see it. I should have, but I didn't. She wiped her eyes. Mom did, though. She watched the house like you used to watch us kids, knowing when something was off even when we thought we were being sneaky. She dug up that box with her bare hands, broke her nails and didn't care. She protected me the way you always did. She touched the gravestone. I'm okay now. It took a year, but I'm okay. The house is mine. My credit is almost fixed. I'm helping other people who went through this. And Mom is still watching over me, just like you asked her to. She sat there for an hour, feeling the autumn sun warm her face. When she left, she felt lighter. That evening, she came to my house for dinner. We'd made it a weekly tradition, Thursday nights together. We cooked pasta, drank wine, talked about everything and nothing. Halfway through the meal, Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. Mom, I never properly thanked you. I squeezed her fingers. You don't need to thank me for loving you. She smiled. I do, though. You saved my entire life, my future, my sanity, everything. She paused. I've been thinking about the lake house. It's too big for just me, and it has all those memories of Dad. Would you want to live there with me? We could split time between there and here, make it a family place again. I felt tears sting my eyes. I'd love that, baby. We spent that first Christmas at the lake house, just the two of us and Linda. Sarah had decorated every room, putting up the ornaments her father had collected over the years, playing the music he'd loved. We cooked his recipes, told his stories, remembered him in every detail. On Christmas morning, Sarah handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was a necklace with a compass pendant. So you always know which direction to go, she said. And so I never forget that you always point me towards safety, even when I can't see the danger myself. I put it on and haven't taken it off since. That afternoon, we walked down to the lake, bundled in coats, our breath fogging in the cold air. This place almost wasn't mine, Sarah said, looking out over the frozen water. He almost stole it, but you wouldn't let him. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. Your father left you this house because he knew you'd love it the way he did. No con artist was going to take that away. We stood there together, mother and daughter, survivors. The house behind us was warm with lights. Our future was uncertain but our own. That was enough. Monica Pritchard was sentenced to 7 years and served 4 before being released on parole. I've kept tabs on her through Tom's contacts. She moved to Nevada, got a job as a bartender, and as far as anyone knows, hasn't returned to fraud. Maybe prison changed her, or maybe she just got better at hiding it. Derek is currently 6 years into his sentence at a medium security facility upstate. He'll be eligible for parole in 2 years. Sarah receives notification of every parole hearing, and she's already written a statement opposing his early release. She's not vindictive about it, just firm. He planned to destroy me and walk away. He should serve his full time. I agree. He writes to her sometimes, letters the prison forwards through her attorney. She doesn't read them. Marcus screens them to ensure there's nothing legally significant, then files them away. He doesn't get my attention anymore, Sarah says. He doesn't get any part of me. She's reclaimed every piece of herself he tried to take. That's the real victory, more than the conviction or the restitution. She's whole again, maybe more whole than before because she knows her own strength now. Sarah started dating again about 18 months after the divorce was finalized. She was nervous about it, worried about trusting again, but her therapist encouraged her to take small steps. She met a teacher named Michael at a hospital charity event. He was kind, patient, and refreshingly transparent about his finances from the start. "I have student loans, a modest savings account, and I split rent with a roommate," he told her on their second date. "I'm telling you now because I assume you want to know." She appreciated the honesty. They took it slow. He met me after 3 months of dating, and I grilled him politely over dinner while Sarah watched with amusement. "Mom is very protective now," she'd warned him. He'd smiled. "Good. She should be." After he left, I told Sarah, "He seems genuine. But keep watching the accounts." She laughed. "Already am. I check everything weekly now. That won't ever stop." Good. Trust is important, but verification is essential. She'd learned that the hard way. Michael understood that Sarah came with caution now, and he never pushed her to move faster than she was ready. After a year, she introduced him to her advocacy work, and he started volunteering at events. They made a good team. The money Derek owed in restitution continued to accumulate with interest. His monthly prison payments of $500 barely touched the principal. Patricia estimated that at the current rate, it would take Derek 44 years to pay back what he stole. He'd be 95 years old. "The judgment stays on his record, though," Marcus explained. "If he ever inherits money, wins lottery, anything like that, we can garnish it. He'll carry this debt for the rest of his life." That felt like justice to Sarah. Not perfect justice, but justice nonetheless. The criminal conviction, the prison time, the permanent financial consequence. Together they meant Derek couldn't just serve his time and start over like nothing happened. He'd be marked as a felon. He'd struggle to find work. He'd never be able to commit this crime again without facing enhanced penalties as a repeat offender. "He didn't just steal money," Sarah told me once. "He stole years of my life, time I spent building something with someone who was actively destroying it. He doesn't get to walk away clean from that." The restitution judgment meant he never would. His crime would follow him forever, the way trauma follows victims. At least, the consequences were shared. The box itself, the metal lockbox that started everything, was entered into evidence at trial, and then returned to Sarah after the case closed. She brought it to the lake house and stood in the backyard, right where Derek had buried it, holding it in her hands. "I should throw this in the lake," she said. "Let it sink and be done with it." But she didn't. Instead, she cleaned it thoroughly, removed every trace of Derek from it, and repurposed it. Now it holds important documents in her home office. Her passport, the deed to the lake house, birth certificates, her father's will, medical records, financial statements. "It used to hold evidence of someone trying to destroy me," she said when she showed me. "Now it holds proof of everything I've built. I took it back, just like I took back everything else." The symbolism wasn't lost on either of us. The object that represented her worst betrayal now protected her most valuable assets. She'd transformed it, the way she'd transformed herself, from victim to survivor to advocate, from broken to healed to stronger than before. The box sat on her shelf, no longer buried, no longer holding secrets, just there, visible, serving her purposes now. I think about that October morning often, the moment I looked out the window and saw something wrong. If I'd left the house 5 minutes earlier, if I'd been looking at my phone instead of the yard, if I'd assumed Derek had a reasonable explanation and never dug up that box, Sarah would have lost everything. He would have disappeared with her money, her house, her future. She would have spent years recovering, maybe never fully understanding what happened or why. But I saw him. I trusted my instincts over my desire to believe the best. I acted immediately and without hesitation. Those choices made all the difference. It's taught me that protection sometimes looks like suspicion. Love sometimes looks like invasion of privacy. Trust is important, but blind trust is dangerous. I won't apologize for staying home that day, for watching, for digging. I saved my daughter. Every mother should be so lucky to see the danger in time and so brave to confront it. That's what I tell other people now when Sarah and I speak together at events. If something feels wrong, investigate. You're not being paranoid or controlling, you're being protective, and that might save someone you love. The lake house has become a place of healing for our whole family. Linda brings her kids there in summer. We host Thanksgiving there every year. Sarah and Michael got engaged last month on the dock, right at sunset. She called me immediately afterward, her voice full of joy. "Mom," he asked, and I said yes, and I'm not scared. I'm just happy. That's growth. That's healing. She's allowed herself to be happy again without waiting for the other shoe to drop. Michael knows her history, knows what she survived, and loves her anyway. Not despite her caution, but understanding why it's necessary. They're planning a small wedding here at the lake house next fall. Her father would have loved that. I'll walk her down the aisle, and this time I'll know the person waiting for her is worthy of her trust. I'll verify it right up until the wedding day, and probably afterward too. Sarah jokes that Michael should expect impromptu financial audits for the rest of his life. He says he'll provide quarterly reports to make it easier. They laugh about it, but underneath the humor is a real understanding. Trust has to be earned and maintained, especially after it's been shattered. Michael is willing to do that work. That's how I know he's different. Sometimes people ask if I regret digging up that box, exposing Sarah to such pain. The answer is always no. The pain was coming whether I dug up that box or not. Derek's plan had an end date. He was leaving in 9 days. If I'd done nothing, Sarah would have woken up one morning to find her husband gone, her accounts emptied, her house stolen, and crushing debt in her name. She would have been blindsided with no evidence, no way to prove fraud, and no time to protect herself. By digging up that box, I gave her evidence, time, and agency. She got to control the narrative instead of being destroyed by it. She got to press charges instead of being told nothing could be done. She got justice instead of just pain. Yes, it hurt. Yes, she went through trauma and grief and betrayal. But she went through it with support, with legal protection, with her family around her. She went through it as a fighter, not a victim. That's the difference my actions made. I didn't create her pain. I gave her the tools to survive it and eventually thrive beyond it. I'd make the same choice again without hesitation. A mother's job is to protect her children, even when they're grown, even when the danger comes from inside their own home. The strangest part of the whole experience was discovering I had instincts I didn't know I possessed. I'm not a detective or an investigator. I'm a 62-year-old widow who worked as a school librarian for 35 years. But that morning, something in Derek's body language, in the furtiveness of his movements, in the wrongness of burying something in secret, it all triggered an alarm I didn't know I had. Maybe it was mother's intuition. Maybe it was the accumulated wisdom of decades watching people. Maybe it was my late husband's voice in my head, the way he'd always told me to trust my gut, even when I second-guessed myself. Whatever it was, I listened to it. I acted on it, and that saved my daughter. I've told Sarah she has that same instinct. She's already proven it by sensing something was wrong before I found the box. She just hadn't trusted herself enough to act. Now she does. That's another gift that came from this nightmare. Sarah learned to trust her own judgment again, to believe her perceptions even when someone she loves tells her she's wrong. She won't ignore red flags anymore. None of us will. We've all been changed by what happened, sharpened into more cautious, more aware versions of ourselves. Derek's arrest made the news again recently when the state used his case as an example in new legislation about financial fraud in domestic relationships. Sarah was invited to testify before the state legislature about the need for stronger protections and faster legal remedies for victims. She took the day off work, put on her best suit, and told a room full of politicians exactly what it's like to discover your husband is a criminal. The system isn't designed for speed, she said, and fraud cases take months or years to resolve while victims are drowning in debt they didn't create. We need emergency processes that can freeze accounts and clear fraudulent debt faster. We need mandatory credit monitoring for fraud victims at no cost to them. We need laws that make it easier to prove you didn't open those accounts or sign those loans. She was articulate, passionate, and compelling. The committee listened. 3 months later, they passed a bill called Sarah's Law that created expedited processes for domestic financial fraud cases. When the governor signed it, Sarah stood beside him at the ceremony. The local news covered it. Under the headline was a photo of Sarah, strong and professional, with me standing just behind her. I kept that newspaper. My daughter turned her trauma into legislation that will help thousands of other victims. I've never been more proud. Last week, Sarah and I drove past her old house, the one she'd shared with Derek. She sold it a year ago, finally ready to let it go. A young couple bought it, repainted it cheerful yellow, and planted flowers in the yard. We slowed down as we passed, and Sarah looked at it thoughtfully. "I used to love that house," she said. "I picked out every paint color, planted that garden, imagined raising kids there. And then it became the place where I was betrayed, where police arrested my husband, where my whole life fell apart." She paused. "But now I can look at it and just see a house. It doesn't hold power over me anymore. It's just a building where other people live. That's healing. That's what recovery looks like. Not forgetting, but integrating the experience into your life story without letting it define you." Sarah is so much more than what Derek did to her. She's a nurse who saves lives, an advocate who helps others, a daughter, sister, friend, and now fiancé. She's building a new life, a better life, and it has nothing to do with Derek Fletcher except for the strength she gained from surviving him. That's the real ending to this story. Not the arrest or the conviction or the restitution. The real ending is Sarah, happy and whole, planning a future she controls. I still wear the compass necklace Sarah gave me, and I still watch. Not obsessively, not paranoid, but aware. I notice things. When Linda's boyfriend seemed evasive about his finances, I asked questions until I was satisfied he was just private, not criminal. When my neighbor mentioned her daughter's husband suddenly wanted control of all their accounts, I suggested she check her credit report. When Sarah's colleague confided that her fiancé kept pushing her to add him to her house title before the wedding, I told her about Derek and urged caution. I've become the neighborhood watchdog for financial red flags, and I don't apologize for it. Some people think I'm too suspicious now, too mistrustful. But those people didn't dig up a box full of evidence that their son-in-law was destroying their daughter's life. I did. So I'll keep watching. I'll keep asking questions. I'll keep trusting my instincts over my desire to believe everyone is good. Because the alternative is looking out my window one morning, seeing something wrong, and deciding it's none of my business. I'll never make that choice. Protection matters more than politeness. Family matters more than appearances. Truth matters more than comfortable lies. The anniversary is coming up again soon. 2 years since I saw Derek burying that box. Sarah and I have plans to spend the day together at the lake house, maybe bury something of our own. Not secrets or evidence, but a time capsule with good things. Photos of Sarah's engagement, the newspaper article about her advocacy work, a copy of the legislation that bears her name, a letter to her future children about resilience and strength. We'll bury it near the dock, far from the oak tree where Derek's box was hidden, and we'll mark it with a stone that says, Hope, 2025. We'll dig it up in 10 years, and remember not just what we survived, but who we became because of it. That's the story I want to define us. Not the betrayal, but the recovery. Not the crime, but the justice. Not the breaking, but the rebuilding. That's what I want people to take away from this. Yes, terrible things happen. Yes, people you trust will sometimes betray you. Yes, you can lose everything you thought was secure. But you can also fight back, rebuild, and become stronger than you were before. You can take the worst thing that ever happened to you and transform it into something that helps others. You can survive and even thrive. That's what Sarah did. That's what we did together. So here's what I want you to remember. If something feels wrong, investigate. If you see something suspicious, act. If someone you love is in danger, intervene even when it's uncomfortable or awkward or they might get angry. Better angry and safe than trusting and destroyed. Watch the people around you. Notice changes in behavior, evasiveness about money, isolation from family. These are warning signs, not reasons to dismiss your concerns. And if you're the one being victimized, know this. It's not your fault. You're not stupid. You're not weak. You trusted someone who chose to betray that trust. That's a failure of their character, not yours. You can survive this. You can rebuild. You can help others survive too. Sarah is proof. I'm proof. Our story is proof that vigilance, courage, and action can save lives, and that mothers will dig through dirt with their bare hands to protect their children. We'll break our nails and our hearts and anything else necessary. We'll face down criminals and courts and judgment. We'll stand beside our children while they rebuild from ruins. Because that's what mothers do. We watch, we act, we protect, always.